For 28 years, I sacrificed everything for my daughter. Sold my mother's silver so she could play soccer. Worked 3 jobs for her college tuition. Canceled my own dentist appointments so she could have braces. Raised her alone after her father died when she was 7. On her wedding day, after I'd paid for the venue, the photographer, half the catering, she seated me outside by the dumpsters, hidden from her new high society in-laws. Told me it's just for today. So at 3 p.m., when all the final vendor payments were due, the payments only I could authorize, I made some calls. "I'm sorry," I said calmly to each one. "I can't make the payment after all. Let me take you back to where this started. They say weddings are about family, about love, about belonging. At my daughter's wedding, I sat outside next to the dumpsters. Nobody noticed, nobody cared. So I took the gift I had brought, tucked it under my arm, and left. Minutes later, I made a single phone call and her perfect day began to fall apart. You have to see what happened next. Before we continue, tell us where you're tuning in from. Before the laughter, the humiliation, the call that changed everything began, my life was never great, but it was full of meaning. My name is Susan Keller. For everyone who knows me, just Sue, and I taught 3rd graders to read, to write, and to believe in themselves for 35 years. After I lost my husband Thomas in a factory accident when Maria was 7 years old, I learned that love means sacrifice. Thomas was inspecting a defective boiler when it exploded. They brought me his helmet and his wedding ring in a brown envelope. I remember staring at the envelope for hours, unable to open it because that would have sealed the reality. But Maria needed dinner. Maria needed her bedtime story. Maria needed a mother who stayed calm. So I did. I took care of summer schools, after-school tutoring, and weekend curriculum planning. Every cent that was left over went into a savings account named Maria's Future. While other parents bought new cars or went on vacation, I drove my old Volkswagen and stayed home. When Maria needed braces, I canceled my dentist appointment. When she wanted to join the traveling soccer team, I sold my mother's silver cutlery set. "You give too much," Karen said once, watching me sew the hem of Maria's prom dress at midnight. "She needs to learn the value of things." But how could I explain to Karen that every stitch, every sacrifice was my way of loving Thomas through our daughter? That seeing Maria's success was like watching a part of him live on? On the morning of Maria's wedding, I stood in my small bedroom, steam rising from the iron as I pressed my second-hand dress one more time. The blue satin caught the early light, reminding me of happier times. In a corner lay the gift I had saved for 3 years, an antique pearl necklace that had belonged to Thomas's grandmother. The same necklace I had worn at my own wedding. Now restored and adjusted for fit, my phone buzzed. "Thanks again for everything, Mom. Today will be perfect. See you there." I smiled at the message, though something wasn't right. She hadn't asked where I would be sitting. She hadn't mentioned that we would walk down the aisle together. She hadn't said anything about the mother-daughter dance we had planned months ago. Karen called while I was putting on my earrings. "How are you doing?" "I'm fine," I said, the standard answer I'd given for years. "Sue," she said with that warning tone I knew all too well. "Remember our conversation. Don't expect too much today." "What's that supposed to mean?" She sighed. "The Brightmans are just different, and Maria has changed." "She's still my daughter," I interrupted. "And it's her wedding day. Of course she wants me there." "Of course," Karen said, but I heard the doubt in her voice. "Remember, you've already done enough. More than enough." After I hung up, I sat on the bed surrounded by memories. On the wall above my dresser hung 25 years of school photos. Maria without teeth, Maria in her soccer jersey, Maria at graduation. In every picture, her smile became more polished, more distant. I thought about the wedding costs and calculated in my head what I had contributed. The deposit for the venue when they were short on cash. Half of the catering bill when prices unexpectedly increased. The deposit for the photographer. The deposit for the florist. All quietly, without fuss, because that's how mothers do it. Thomas would have been proud, I told myself. He had always said, "Family comes first." The drive to the vineyard took 40 minutes. When I arrived at the parking lot, I saw what money could buy. White tents swaying in the breeze. Crystal chandeliers hanging from the wooden beams. Waiters in spotless uniforms carried silver trays. Everything gleamed with a perfection that made my modest contributions seem almost ridiculous. I clutched my gift tighter and smoothed my dress as I walked to the entrance. A young woman with a clipboard stopped me. Name? Susan Keller, mother of the bride. Her eyes widened slightly before she caught herself. Oh yes, one moment. She flipped through the pages, frowning. There you are. You're seated at table 27. Table 27. The main tent only had 20 tables. I had seen the seating chart myself. Yes, it's right outside the main tent. A really nice spot, very intimate. A lump formed in my throat, but I kept my smile. I see. Thank you. As I walked across the grounds, familiar faces turned away. Maria's friends from college, whom I had hosted countless times during semester breaks. Daniel's parents, who had been so nice at the engagement dinner. Ben, the wedding coordinator, who had still been cashing my checks last week. The main tent was a masterpiece of white and gold. But inside there was no table 27, no seat with my name, no place for the woman who had made this day possible. Finally, I found it. A small folding table, set up outside the tent between the service entrance and a row of dumpsters. The card with my name stood alone on the white tablecloth in beautiful but cruel calligraphy. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. 28 years of sacrifice, and this was my place, hidden like a shame, like something to be ashamed of. Through the tent opening, I saw her. Maria, radiant in the dress I had helped her choose. Daniel, handsome in his tuxedo. Victoria Brightman, charming her society friends. They moved through their perfect world, a world where apparently there was no room for a retired teacher with calloused hands and a second-hand dress. Maria looked at me once. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second before she turned to her new family and laughed at something Victoria had said. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She didn't acknowledge the woman who had given everything to make this moment possible. I stood there, the gift in my hand, as the truth settled over me like a shroud. I hadn't just been forgotten, I had been deliberately erased. Karen's words echoed in my head again. Don't expect too much, but I had expected something. Basic dignity, a place at my only child's wedding. The acknowledgement that I mattered, if only a little. The band began playing in the tent. Glasses clinked, laughter swelled and ebbed like waves. And I remained outside, invisible, superfluous. Something in me, a last thread of hope I had been clinging to, finally snapped. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of expensive perfumes and catering. I stood frozen, still processing the reality of my isolation. A waiter rushed past me with a tray full of champagne glasses, not even looking at me. In the tent, glass clinked against glass, and Victoria Brightman's characteristic laugh cut through the air like a knife. I smoothed my dress again, a nervous habit from years of making sure I was presentable for parent-teacher conferences. Suddenly the blue satin felt cheap, old-fashioned. Around me, women in designer dresses glided by in clouds of silk and chiffon. Their jewelry caught the light. Real diamonds, not the cubic zirconia at my ears. Mrs. Keller. A quiet voice made me spin around. Ben Miller, the wedding coordinator, stood there looking uncomfortable. His normally perfect hair was slightly disheveled, sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool spring air. Hi, I managed to smile. The place looks great. You've done wonderful work. He shifted from one foot to the other, not meeting my eyes. About the seating arrangement. I want you to know it wasn't my idea. Oh. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, distant and hollow. The original plan had you at table 2 with the family. He glanced at the tent and then back at me. But Mrs. Brightman made last-minute changes. She said something about optimizing the space. Optimizing the space. What an elegant way to say hide the embarrassing mother. I see. I clutched my gift tighter. And Maria was okay with this? Ben's silence was answer enough. He did look genuinely distressed. I tried to suggest alternatives, but it's okay, Ben. I patted his arm, falling back into my teacher role of comforting others even when I was the one suffering. You're just doing your job. He nodded gratefully and hurried away, presumably relieved to escape the awkward situation. I was left alone again. The sounds of celebration mocked me from inside. A loud laugh caught my attention. Through the gauze fabric, I could see Maria posing for photos with Daniel's family. Victoria put an arm around Maria's waist, positioning her perfectly. The photographer, whose deposit I had paid, scurried around capturing the perfect family portrait that I was missing from. I thought about storming in, making a scene, claiming my rightful place. But years of putting Maria first had taught me too well. I couldn't ruin her day, even if she had already destroyed mine. Instead, I sat down at my lonely table. The chair wobbled on the uneven ground. From this angle, I had a clear view of the service entrance where kitchen staff rushed in and out. The smell of garbage wafted over whenever the wind shifted. "Mom." I looked up to see Maria standing a few feet away. She looked like a princess in her dress, the dress I had helped her choose, though she had told the saleswoman it was Victoria's suggestion. Her expression was a mixture of guilt, pity, and impatience. "Sweetheart," I said, standing up. "You look beautiful." "Thanks." She looked around, noticing my isolated surroundings. "Listen, about the seating arrangement." "It's okay," I lied. I didn't want to hear her prepared apology. "It's just, Victoria was concerned about the photos, and with her society friends here." She trailed off, twisting her engagement ring. "You understand, right? It's just for today, as if my humiliation had an expiration date." "Of course," I heard myself say. "Whatever makes you happy." Relief flooded her face. "I knew you'd understand." "You're the best mom." She leaned forward to give me a quick, awkward hug, careful not to wrinkle her dress. "I have to get back. The photographer wants more family photos." Family photos. The irony wasn't lost on me. I watched her rush back into the tent, to her new family, to the life she had chosen. A life that apparently had no room for the woman who had sacrificed everything for her. The celebration began in earnest. The band played, guests danced, and the party went on without me. Occasionally, someone came out of the tent to smoke or make a phone call. They saw me sitting there and quickly looked away. I recognized many of them: neighbors, Maria's childhood friends, people I had known for years. No one stopped to talk. Finally, a waiter remembered to bring me a plate of food: lukewarm chicken breast and wilted salad. The champagne was flat. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing. My phone buzzed with a message from Karen. "How's it going?" "Send photos." I didn't dare respond. What should I say? That I was sitting alone next to the garbage? Eating leftovers while my daughter pretended I didn't exist? The speeches began. I could hear them through the tent walls. Daniel's father spoke about family values. Victoria spoke about gaining a daughter. Friends told funny stories about the couple. No one mentioned the mother of the bride. No one acknowledged the woman who had worked 2 jobs so Maria could go to college, who stayed up nights helping with homework, who sold her own wedding ring to pay for soccer camp. In that moment, the gift in my lap caught my attention. The pearl necklace that had been in Thomas's family for generations, that I had worn at my own wedding when Thomas placed it around my neck and whispered, "Now you're truly a Keller." I had it cleaned and reset, spent money I couldn't afford because I wanted Maria to have something meaningful, something that connected her to her father and our history. Looking at it now, I realized how foolish I had been. Maria didn't want a connection to her past. She wanted to erase it, to pretend she had sprung fully formed from the world of country clubs and stock portfolios that was the Brightmans. The dance floor opened up. Through the tent slit, I glimpsed swirling dresses and tuxedos, the father-daughter dance from which I was excluded, the mother-son dance that underscored my absence. In that moment, something crystallized. This wasn't just about the seating arrangement. It was about Maria's decision to rewrite her history, to erase the parts that didn't fit her new narrative. And I was the most important part that needed to be deleted. I stood slowly, my legs stiff from sitting. The gift weighed heavy in my hands. In the tent, the party continued, untouched by the drama playing out in the shadows. I had to make a decision. I could stay here and accept the crumbs of attention Maria threw my way. Or I could finally acknowledge the painful clarity of this day. I was no longer welcome in my daughter's life. My fingers closed tighter around the gift box. Inside that tent were thousands of euros of my savings, transformed into flowers, food, and music. My sacrifices had made this perfect day possible, even if no one would ever acknowledge it. For the first time in 28 years, I put myself first. My hands trembled as I set the gift box back on the wobbly table. For 28 years, I had put Maria first. For what? To be hidden like an embarrassing secret, like something to be ashamed of. The music in the tent swelled, some romantic ballad I didn't recognize. And I made a decision. No drama, no confrontation, just a quiet goodbye to a life that no longer had room for me. I took the gift, tucked my purse under my arm, and walked away from the garbage-reeking table. My heels, bought on sale especially for this occasion, crunched on the gravel path leading to the parking lot. Each step felt like I was shedding a weight I had carried too long. A waiter smoking near the service entrance saw me leave. Ben, rushing between tent and kitchen, stopped mid-stride. His eyes widened as he realized what was happening. I kept walking. My old Volkswagen stood alone in the farthest corner of the parking lot, away from the Mercedes and BMWs, just as I had been separated from the celebration. As I slid into the driver's seat, my phone buzzed again. "Karen, Sue, is everything okay?" This time I answered. "I'm driving home." Her response came immediately. "What happened?" "I'll explain when I get there." The drive back was surreal. The spring landscape passed by in a blur, beautiful and indifferent to my humiliation. I thought about Thomas and wondered what he would say about our daughter's choices. He had always been an optimist. He saw the best in people, even when they didn't deserve it. Karen was waiting on the porch when I arrived. She saw my face and opened her arms. I fell into them, and finally the tears came. "Tell me," she said, leading me inside. Over tea in my small kitchen, I told her everything. The isolated table, the dumpsters, Maria's weak apologies, the way everyone looked through me as if I were invisible. Karen's face darkened with each detail. That ungrateful... "No," I interrupted. "She made her choice. And now what? Are you just going to accept this?" I stared at the gift box on the kitchen table. "Now I make mine." Something in my voice made Karen lean forward. "Sue, what are you thinking?" I pulled out my phone and the folder from my purse that contained all the receipts and contracts for the wedding. "I'm thinking about all the deposits I made. The final payments that are due today." Karen's eyes widened. "Sue?" "You paid the deposits," she confirmed, as I flipped through the papers. "But the final payments were on me. The catering, the flowers, the bar, all waiting for my authorization." "Sue," Karen said, a mixture of awe and admiration in her voice. First, I found the catering contract. Outstanding amount, $8,000, due by 3 p.m. on the day of service. Otherwise, they had the right to cease operations immediately. My fingers hovered over the phone. It was 2:47 p.m. "Are you really going to undo this?" Karen asked. I thought about Maria's face when she explained the seating arrangement to me, the careless way she had ignored my feelings. The years of distance I had ignored, telling myself she was just busy, career-focused, growing up. I called the catering company. "Elegant Events. This is Marie speaking." "This is Susan Keller. I'm calling about the Brightman-Keller wedding." "Oh yes, Mrs. Keller. Is everything satisfactory with the service?" "Actually, I need to discuss the final payment." A pause. "The payment that's due in 13 minutes?" "Yes, I'm afraid something has changed. I can't make the payment." The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, "Mrs. Keller, we'll have to stop service immediately without that payment. The contract is very clear." "I understand," I said quietly. "I'm sorry for the inconvenience." After I hung up, I looked at Karen. That was the first. The florist was next. Then the bar, the wedding cake delivery. Each call was brief, professional, devastating. With each conversation, I dismantled the perfect wedding I had helped build. "The band," Karen reminded me, pointing to another contract. I shook my head. I only paid the photographer and the venue deposit. The band was all Victoria's doing. At 3:01 p.m., my phone exploded with calls. Maria, Ben, numbers I didn't know. I let them all go to voicemail. Karen made more tea while we waited. The first voicemail came from Ben, his tone clearly panicked. "Mrs. Keller, we have a problem. The catering is packing up. They say the payment was declined. Please call me back immediately." The second was from Maria. "Mom, where are you? What's going on with the food? People are hungry, and the staff is leaving." I deleted it without listening to the rest. You know this is going to cause chaos? Karen said, but she was smiling. I know. I sipped my tea. They'll have to solve the problems themselves. Maybe Victoria's society connections can help. We sat in comfortable silence, imagining the scene at the vineyard, how the perfect wedding was unraveling thread by thread. Confused guests, then annoyed, then angry. Victoria's carefully maintained facade cracking as one vendor after another packed up and left. Around 4:30 p.m., a car screeched into my driveway. Through the window, I saw Maria, still in her wedding dress, storming up the path. Daniel followed her with a confused look on his face. Karen squeezed my hand. Do you want me to stay? The doorbell rang, followed by pounding. Mom, open up. I know you're in there. I opened the door to find my daughter, her face red and furious, her perfect makeup smeared with tears. What have you done? She screamed, pushing past me into the house. I left. I said simply, you canceled a wedding where I wasn't welcome. Not welcome? Her voice rose higher. You had a seat. By the dumpsters, I interrupted. Outside the tent, away from the family photos, hidden from your new in-laws. Maria had the decency to look ashamed, but only for a moment. That wasn't my idea, Victoria thought. And you agreed, I finished. You put optics over your own mother. Daniel stepped forward, his designer suit wrinkled. Mrs. Keller, surely we can work this out. If it's about money... It's not about money, I said, feeling calmer than I had in years. It's about respect. It's about 28 years of sacrifice thrown in the trash because I didn't fit the image you wanted to project. You're ruining my wedding, Maria wailed. No, honey, you ruined it yourself when you decided I was an embarrassment. She stared at me as if she'd never seen me before. Maybe she hadn't. Maybe she'd only ever seen the mother who gave tirelessly. Never the woman who could walk away. The venue is paid through midnight, I continued, and Victoria's band should still be there. I'm sure with your new family's wealth and connections, you can salvage something. I can't believe you're doing this, Maria whispered. I picked up the gift box from the table and held it out to her. I wanted to give you this. Your great-grandmother's pearls, the ones I wore at my wedding. But now I see you don't want a connection to your past. You want to erase it. She didn't take the box. Instead, she turned to Daniel. Let's go. We need to fix this mess. As they left, Maria paused at the door. I'll never forgive you for this. I know, I replied. But I hope someday you'll understand. The door slammed shut behind them. Through the window, I watched the car race away with squealing tires. Back to the chaos I had caused. Karen put an arm around my shoulders. How do you feel? I thought about the question. The teacher in me wanted to feel guilty for the lesson I had just taught. The mother in me mourned the relationship I had lost. But the woman in me, who had been invisible for too long, felt something completely different. Free, I said. Finally, I feel free. We went into the living room and Karen poured something stronger than tea. As night fell, my phone continued to buzz with calls and messages I didn't answer. Each notification was another thread in the web of dependency I had woven around myself, now finally breaking. Tomorrow I would face the consequences. Tomorrow I would figure out how to build a life not centered on another person's needs. But tonight I would sit with my best friend and mourn the daughter I had lost long before this wedding. The gift box sat untouched on the side table. Inside, the pearls waited for a bride who would want them, who would appreciate the history and love they represented. That bride wasn't Maria. Maybe she never had been. As Karen and I talked late into the night, I realized something profound. I hadn't just walked away from a wedding. I had walked away from an identity that no longer served me. For the first time in decades, I was Sue. Not Maria's mother, not Thomas's widow, but simply myself. And that, I decided, was gift enough. Karen stayed until midnight, and we tracked the chaos through social media and the flood of text messages I continued to ignore. Someone from the wedding, probably one of Maria's college friends, was live tweeting the disaster. Band confused why half the guests are leaving early. No cake. What kind of wedding runs out of food? The groom's mother is crying in the bathroom. At 11 p.m., a notification from the local news appeared on my phone. Society wedding disrupted by vendor withdrawals. Details to follow. The news found out about this. Karen laughed in disbelief. That was probably Victoria, I said. She'd rather make the vendors look incompetent than admit they couldn't pay. When Karen left, I sat alone in my quiet house, surrounded by photos of the daughter I had lost. I couldn't sleep, so I made tea and opened my laptop. My inbox was full of new emails, from relatives, mutual friends, numbers I didn't know. Everyone wanted to know what had happened. I didn't respond to any. Instead, I opened a new document and began to write. Not apologies or explanations, but a letter to myself. A reminder of why I had done what I had done. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through my bedroom window and persistent knocking. Through the peephole, I saw Ben Mueller, looking like he hadn't slept. I opened the door. Ben. Mrs. Keller, he said, wringing his hands. May I come in? Against my better judgment, I let him in. He sat on my couch, still in his wrinkled suit from yesterday. I need to understand what happened, he said. The Brightmans are threatening to sue everyone. The venue, the vendors, me. They can't sue for services that weren't paid for, I noted. But they authorized those contracts. You signed them. I paid the deposits, I interrupted. The contracts made it clear that final payments were due on the wedding day. If I don't pay, the vendors had the right to cease service. Ben's shoulders sagged. Do you have any idea what this means for my reputation? Victoria Brightman is telling everyone I'm incompetent. A spark of anger flared in me. And where was your concern for my reputation when you allowed me to sit by the dumpsters? He had the decency to look ashamed. I tried to tell them it was wrong. But you didn't insist. You didn't refuse. You chose their money over decency. It wasn't that simple. It was exactly that simple. I stood up to signal the conversation was over. You made your choice, Ben. Now live with the consequences. As he left, I saw a car parked across the street. Through the windshield, I could see Victoria Brightman, talking animatedly on the phone, gesturing wildly. When she noticed I was watching her, she drove away quickly. The day passed in a surreal fog. Friends who hadn't called me in years suddenly remembered my number. The school principal left a voicemail. Sue, is everything okay? There are interesting rumors going around. Karen came over in the afternoon with food and gossip. The country club is in an uproar. Apparently, Victoria had to call in every favor to organize emergency catering. In the end, they had pizza from Antonio's. Pizza at a vineyard wedding, I mused. How democratic. There's more, Karen said, unpacking vegetables. Daniel's father is furious. It seems Victoria had been bragging everywhere that she was covering all the costs. Now the truth is coming out. My phone rang again. Another unknown number. This time I answered. Susan Keller speaking. A clear voice I didn't recognize. Yes, this is Margaret Winter from the Munich Courier. I'm writing an article about the Brightman wedding incident. Would you like to comment? I almost laughed. No comment. But I'm sure you'll want to tell your version. My version is private. Goodbye. At dusk, a certified letter arrived with legal letterhead. I opened it to find a lawsuit from Victoria's attorney. I was to immediately reimburse all wedding costs or face legal action. I called Thomas, my own attorney, and an old college friend of Thomas's. Sue, they've got nothing, he assured me as I explained. You fulfilled your contractual obligations. The deposits were paid. The final payments were voluntary. They're claiming emotional damages. I snorted. Let them try. Countersue for the same. The way they treated you would make a judge very sympathetic, I think. That night I did something I hadn't done in years. I ordered takeout just for myself. I opened a bottle of wine and watched old movies. No papers to grade, no worry about Maria's latest crisis. Just me, comfortable in my own company. The next morning, another car was parked in front of my house. Daniel's Tesla pulled up at my door. He himself looked drained. Mrs. Keller, he said when I opened. Can I talk to you? Something about his posture, a humility I hadn't seen before, made me step aside. I need to apologize, he said as he sat. I had no idea about the seating arrangement, how they treated you. I studied him carefully. Really? I was focused on other things. The ceremony, the guests, Maria. He broke off. That's no excuse. I should have noticed. I should have insisted you be treated with respect. He ran a hand through his hair. Now I'm seeing a side of my family, and of Maria, that I don't like. This was unexpected. What do you mean? My mother won't stop ranting about class and reputation. How you embarrassed the family. He met my eyes. But you didn't embarrass anyone. We embarrassed ourselves. I know, I said, feeling a flicker of compassion for this young man who was perhaps beginning to understand what he'd gotten himself into. Maria won't talk to me, he continued. She's angry that I apologized to the vendors, that I admitted we were wrong. He paused. I found the seating chart in her things. Your name was originally at table 2. She crossed it out herself. The confirmation of what I had suspected still hurt. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. Nobody imagined their wedding day like this. No, he agreed. But maybe this was the wake-up call we needed. He stood to leave, then turned. The pearls you wanted to give her were beautiful. She should have felt honored to wear them. As he left, I sat for a long time, processing this new development. Daniel's visit had opened something up. The possibility that not everyone was beyond redemption. My phone received another message from Maria. We need to talk. The lawyer says you could be held liable for damages. I responded, my lawyer says the opposite. The only damage here was to my heart. She didn't reply. That afternoon, I did something I had been putting off. I called the school board and officially filed my retirement papers. 30 years of teaching, and I was ready for a new chapter. Are you sure? The superintendent asked. You're our best third-grade teacher. I'm sure, I said. It's time. When I hung up, I felt lighter. Another cord cut. Another decision made for myself, not for others. The doorbell rang again. This time it was a delivery. A huge flower arrangement with a card. From the vendors of the Brightman Keller wedding. Thank you for your years of collaboration and your integrity. We stand behind you. I placed them on the dining table. Their beauty contrasted with the ugliness of recent events. The florist had included white roses, the same ones I had originally chosen for Maria's bridal bouquet, before Victoria insisted on exotic orchids. That night, as I prepared a simple dinner, I heard shouting from the street. Through the window, I saw Maria and Victoria arguing next to Victoria's car. Their voices were clearly audible. This is your fault, Victoria shrieked. If you hadn't alienated yourself from your mother, my fault? Maria shot back. You were the one who insisted on the seating arrangement. I was trying to maintain standards. If you had married someone suitable, Daniel is suitable. His family has new money. You can tell in moments like these. I closed the window. I didn't want to hear any more. Their argument was the sound of consequences coming home. Later, as I was getting ready for bed, the door rang one last time. Maria stood there, still in designer clothes but looking defeated. May I come in? She asked quietly. I hesitated, then stepped aside. She sat on the couch where Daniel had sat hours before, but unlike him, she didn't apologize. The wedding is ruined, she said flatly. The society pages are calling it the disaster of the season. I waited. Victoria blames me. Daniel's family blames her. Everyone's threatening lawsuits. She looked at me accusingly. Are you happy now? No, I said honestly. I'm not happy your wedding was ruined, but I don't regret standing up for myself. Standing up for yourself? She raised her voice. You humiliated me. No, Maria. You humiliated me. I just stopped financing it. She stared at me, and for a moment I saw the little girl she had been. Stubborn, proud, unable to admit fault. I want you to fix this, she demanded. I can't fix what I didn't break. You broke everything. No, I said quietly. I stopped pretending it wasn't already broken. Maria's last words hung in the air between us like smoke. We sat in silence. Two strangers with the faces of mother and daughter. The grandfather clock in the living room ticked down the moments as our relationship crumbled. Do you remember when you were 8 and you wanted that American Girl doll? The historical one, Samantha? She blinked, surprised by the subject change. What does that have to do with anything? I worked extra shifts for 3 months to afford it. I did sewing jobs on weekends. I skipped meals. I watched her face for a sign of recognition. On Christmas morning, you were so happy. You said I was the best mother in the world. That was 20 years ago. Yes, and somewhere between then and now, I stopped being a person to you and became a resource. I stood up, needing distance. When did that happen, Maria? When did I become something to be used instead of someone to be loved? She flinched but recovered quickly. I've always loved you. Really? Or did you love what I could do for you? Her phone rang. She looked at it and her face went pale. Daniel's mother is giving an interview to Channel 7 about the wedding fiasco. I almost felt pity for her. Almost. You should go, I said. Take care of your new family. She stood, reaching for her designer purse. At the door, she turned. The lawyer will be in touch about damages. So will mine. As she left, I called Thomas and brought him up to date. Then I did something I should have done years ago. I blocked Maria's number. The next morning, I woke to find my lawn covered in toilet paper, the classic suburban revenge. As I cleaned up the mess, several neighbors came by. We saw the news, said Mrs. Huber from next door. That Brightman woman is saying terrible things about you. Let her, I replied, stuffing damp paper towels into garbage bags. Do you need help? Mr. Peterson offered, already reaching for a piece caught in my maple tree. Soon half the neighborhood was in my yard, cleaning up and gossiping. These people I had lived near for 20 years but barely knew were showing more kindness than my own daughter. My son did the same thing, Mrs. Chen confided as we worked. He married into money and forgot where he came from. I haven't seen my grandchildren in 3 years. Their stories piled up. Entitled children, families torn apart by greed, love tested by social climbing. I wasn't alone in my grief. By noon, my yard was clean, and my kitchen was full of neighbors sharing coffee and homemade cookies. Community formed in the space my family had vacated. The article in the Courier appeared that afternoon. Society Wedding Collapses. A modern fairy tale with a moral. The journalist had done her homework, interviewing vendors, guests, and even the sanitation workers who had been at the venue. Mrs. Keller was always kind, the florist said. She paid deposits on time and never haggled, unlike other parties involved. The caterer was less diplomatic. We've never been treated so disrespectfully. They demanded champagne service on a beer budget, then blamed us when reality set in. But the photographer's quote hit deepest. I've photographed hundreds of weddings. I've never seen a mother of the bride so deliberately excluded. It was cruel. Victoria's interview aired that evening. Karen came over to watch it with me, armed with popcorn and wine. The entire event was sabotaged by a vindictive woman who couldn't stand that her daughter was rising in the world, Victoria declared to the camera, her pearl necklace reflecting the studio lights. The reporter, to her credit, countered, "But didn't Mrs. Keller pay for a substantial portion of the wedding?" Victoria's facade cracked slightly. Financial contributions don't excuse destructive behavior. What about the seating arrangement? Multiple witnesses confirm Mrs. Keller was seated outside the main tent. That's ridiculous. We never... The reporter interrupted, displaying a photo someone had taken. My lonely table next to the dumpsters. Victoria's face froze. No comment, Karen cheered. Now that's journalistic integrity. The interview went spectacularly wrong. Social media exploded in my support. Team Mother of the Bride started trending. Someone created a meme of Victoria's shocked face with the caption, when the trash takes itself out. 3 days later, I received a formal letter from Maria's attorney demanding $5,000 in damages. Thomas laughed when I showed it to him. "Leave this to me," he said. Over the following week, he systematically dismantled their case, providing contracts, receipts, and witness statements. He also discovered something interesting. Victoria Brightman had taken out wedding insurance but let it lapse, assuming she would cover everything. The countersuit Thomas filed was a masterpiece. Emotional damages, defamation, breach of oral contract. We won't win everything, he explained. But they'll think twice before continuing. And he was right. A few days later, their attorney suggested mediation. The mediation took place in a neutral conference room downtown. Maria came with Daniel and their lawyer. I went with Thomas. Victoria was conspicuously absent. "She's not feeling well," Daniel explained, embarrassed. The mediator, a serious woman named Joanna, got straight to the point. "We're here to resolve the financial disputes arising from the Brightman-Keller wedding. Mrs. Keller, would you like to begin?" Thomas spoke for me. My client fulfilled all contractual obligations. Deposits were made. Final payments were discretionary based on satisfactory service. Given the treatment she received, she exercised her right to withhold payment. Maria's attorney countered, claiming emotional damages, social humiliation, and economic losses. Your client, Thomas responded, publicly humiliated a woman who sacrificed everything for her. Emotional damages go both ways. Hours passed. Accusations flew. Coffee went cold. Finally, Joanna called for a break. In the hallway, Daniel approached me. "This is wrong," he said quietly. I studied him. "Then why are you here?" "Because Maria is my wife." He glanced at the conference room door. "But I'm beginning to understand why you did what you did." "Mr. Brightman," Thomas warned. "No, let him speak," I said. Daniel took a deep breath. "I found something in Maria's old room at your house. We were there last month packing her things. A box of cards, all from you. Birthday cards, Valentine's cards, little notes in lunchboxes. Hundreds of them." A lump formed in my throat. I had forgotten about that box. "She kept them all," he continued, "which means at some point they mattered to her. Something changed her. And I think it might have been us. My family, our expectations. Daniel." Maria's sharp voice cut through the moment. "What are you doing?" He turned to his wife. "I'm trying to fix this." "There's nothing to fix. Stop it," he said firmly. "Enough, your mother owes us nothing. We owe her." The mediation resumed with different energy. Daniel's change of heart seemed to deflate Maria's self-righteousness. By the end of the day, we had an agreement. No money would change hands. No lawsuits would follow. A clean break. As we prepared to leave, Maria cornered me at the elevators. "Are you satisfied now? You've turned my husband against me." "No," I said sadly. "He's seeing what was always there, what you ignored." "I need my mother," she said, her voice breaking for the first time. "You need the idea of a mother," I corrected. "Someone who supports you unconditionally, finances your dreams, accepts whatever treatment you give her." "But that's not love, Maria. That's exploitation." The elevator arrived. As the doors opened, she grabbed my arm. "Please don't cut me out completely." I gently removed her hand. "I'm not cutting you out. I'm letting you go. There's a difference." The doors closed between us. In the parking garage, Thomas patted my shoulder. "You did well in there, did I?" I felt exhausted, empty. "I just divorced my daughter." "No," he said. "You set boundaries. What happens next is up to her." On the drive home, I passed the venue where the wedding had taken place. The vineyard looked peaceful in the afternoon sunlight. No trace of the drama that had unfolded there. Life went on, indifferent to our human dramas. That afternoon, I began packing up Maria's childhood room. Each wrapped item was like closing a chapter. Prom dresses, high school yearbooks, swim team trophies. The box of letters Daniel had mentioned sat on her old desk. I opened it and read years of my own handwriting. "Have fun on your first day of kindergarten. Love, Mom. Happy 16th birthday, my wonderful daughter. Congratulations on graduation. I'm so proud of you." When had she stopped reading them? When had they become mere objects to keep rather than messages to cherish? My phone rang with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Mrs. Keller? This is Sarah Mitchell from Channel 9. We're doing a follow-up story on the wedding situation and would love to hear your perspective." I was about to decline, but reconsidered. "You know what? Yes, let's talk." The interview aired 2 days later. I wore my blue dress, the same one I had worn to the wedding, and spoke simply from the heart. "I raised my daughter to be strong, independent, and successful," I said into the camera. In that regard, I was successful. What I didn't teach her is that strength without kindness is just cruelty. Independence without gratitude is selfishness. Success without humanity is just emptiness. "Do you regret your actions at the wedding?" "I regret that it had to come to that. But I don't regret standing up for my dignity." "What would you say to other parents in similar situations?" I looked directly into the camera. "Love your children, but love yourself too. You matter. Your feelings matter. Your dignity matters. Don't let anyone, not even your own child, convince you otherwise." The response was overwhelming. Letters, emails, calls from parents who had been marginalized, grandparents who had been forgotten, anyone who had felt invisible in their own family's story. I framed a letter from Ohio. "You didn't just stand up for yourself. You stood up for all of us who've been treated like doormats by the people we love most. Thank you for showing us it's never too late to matter. The first frost of autumn coated my garden with silver as I stood at the kitchen window, a cup of coffee in my hand, watching the sunrise. 3 months had passed since the wedding, and my life had changed in ways I never imagined. The modest house I had bought was smaller than my old one, but full of light. Karen had helped me choose it. Just 5 blocks from her house, with a small garden and a glassed-in porch, perfect for reading. A new beginning needs new walls, she had said. Together we painted every room in colors I had always liked but never used. Warm terracotta for the living room, soft sage for the bedroom, cheerful yellow for the kitchen. The doorbell rang, probably Mrs. Chen from next door bringing her famous dumplings like she did every Friday. Instead, I found a FedEx driver with an envelope I needed to sign for. Inside was a thick document from Thomas's office, the final papers for my will and trust. Everything I owned, the proceeds from the house, my retirement savings, Thomas's life insurance that I had never touched, would go into a scholarship fund for single parents pursuing education, the Susan Keller Fund for Second Chances. I signed at the marked places, feeling the weight of finality. Maria would receive nothing, not out of spite, but because an inheritance without a relationship made no sense. Later that morning, I drove to the community center for my volunteer shift. After retiring from teaching, I had begun tutoring adults working toward their high school diplomas. Today I would meet with Marie, a young mother who reminded me of myself 30 years ago. Determined, exhausted, hopeful. Mrs. K. She greeted me with a tired smile. I passed the math section. Of course you did, I said, pulling out our study materials. You worked hard. As we practiced writing, Marie shared fragments of her life. Night shifts, raising 2 kids alone, the dream of becoming a nurse. Her story was my story, the story of thousands of women. How did you do it? She asked during a break. Raising a kid alone while working? I thought about the question. One day at a time. I thought sacrifice was love. I paused. Now I know that love requires balance. You can't pour from an empty cup. After tutoring, I met Karen and our friends from book club at the new cafe downtown. We had moved from discussing literature to sharing our lives. 6 women over 60, each with her own story of loss and renewal. Any news from Maria? Helen asked kindly. Not directly, I replied, though I heard she and Daniel separated. The news had reached me last week through Mrs. Huber, who learned it from her hairdresser who had styled Victoria Brightman for a charity event. Apparently Daniel had moved out, unable to reconcile the woman he married with the woman she had become. Poor boy, Martha commented. Poor Maria, I said, surprising myself. She lost herself trying to be someone else. That afternoon I worked in my garden, preparing it for winter. The roses I had transplanted from my old house had taken root, promising blooms for next spring. As I laid mulch around their bases, a car pulled into my driveway. Daniel got out, looking older than his 29 years. Mrs. Keller, he said as he approached. Sue, can I talk to you? I gestured to the porch chairs. Would you like some tea? No, thank you. He sat heavily. I wanted you to know. Maria and I are getting divorced. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, meaning it. Don't be sorry. It's necessary. He looked at his hands. After the mediation, I started seeing things more clearly. The way she treated you wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern. I waited, letting him find the words. She lied to me about money, about her past, about who she is. The woman I married doesn't exist. He looked up. But the saddest thing is, I think she's lying most of all to herself. What will you do? Start over. Maybe go back to Hamburg, closer to my sister. He pulled something from his pocket, a small velvet box. I found this in her jewelry cabinet. She never wore them. Inside were Thomas's grandmother's pearls, still in their original setting. She kept them, I whispered. hidden, like everything real. He handed me the box. They belong to you. I took the pearls, feeling their familiar weight. Thank you, Daniel. He stood to leave, then paused. You were right at the mediation. Love isn't exploitation. I wish I had understood that sooner. As he drove away, I sat with the pearls in my hand, remembering my wedding day. Thomas placing them around my neck, whispering promises of forever. We'd had 16 good years before the accident. 16 years of true love, not the performance Maria had chosen. That night, I hosted my first dinner party in my new house. Karen brought her famous lasagna, Helen brought salad, Martha brought dessert. We crowded around a small dining table, laughing and telling stories. To new beginnings, Karen toasted. To choosing ourselves, Helen added. As we clinked glasses, my phone received a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but the preview made me pause. Mom, it's me. New number. Please read this. I went into the kitchen, my heart pounding. The message continued. I've lost everything. Daniel is gone. Victoria won't speak to me. My friends have disappeared. I've been seeing a therapist. She says I need to face what I've done, who I've become. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for money. I'm just asking if we could talk someday. Really talk. I stared at the screen. Emotions swirled in me. The mother in me wanted to call immediately, to comfort, to fix. But the woman I had become knew better. I responded, I'm glad you're getting help. When you're ready to meet me as equals, not as giver and taker, we can talk. Until then, I wish you well on your journey. Then I returned to my friends, to the life I had built for myself. That night, alone in my cozy bedroom, I opened my journal. Another new habit. The pages were filled with discoveries, books I loved, places I wanted to visit, dreams deferred but not forgotten. Tomorrow, I would drive to the community college and register for art classes. Something I had always wanted to try but never had time for. Next month, I would join Karen on a senior cruise to Norway. In the spring, I would plant vegetables beside my roses. The pearls lay on my dresser, shimmering ethereally in the moonlight. Tomorrow, I would wear them to Sunday brunch with my book club. Not as a relic of the past, but as a symbol of continuity. Proof that some precious things survive even the harshest storms. My phone showed no new messages from Maria. Perhaps she was beginning her own journey of self-discovery. Perhaps not. Either way, my path was clear. I picked up my pen and wrote. Today I learned that forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. That love sometimes means letting go completely. That the family we choose can be stronger than the family we're born into. That it's never too late to make yourself matter. A knock at the door interrupted my writing. Through the window, I saw Karen on my porch, holding 2 mugs. Thought you could use some chamomile? She said when I opened. It was a big day. We settled on the porch swing, wrapped in blankets against the autumn chill. I'm proud of you, she said quietly. For everything, especially for the parts that hurt. She squeezed my hand. You didn't just save yourself, Sue. You showed all of us what's possible. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear one by one. Somewhere in the night, a train whistle sounded, lonely but hopeful, like a story heading toward an unknown destination. Do you think she'll change? Karen asked. I don't know, I answered honestly, but I've learned that's not my responsibility. I can wait for her, pray for her, even love her from a distance, but I can't fix her. She has to want to fix herself. And if she does, she wondered, then we'll build something new, not mother and daughter as we were, but 2 women choosing to know each other. And if not, then I still have this. I gestured around. Friends, purpose, peace, a life I'm proud of. As Karen went home, I stayed on the porch, wrapped in my blanket. The night air smelled of wood smoke and possibility. Morning would bring new challenges, new joys, new chances to live authentically. The wedding that had ended in disaster had become my beginning. By losing a daughter who never really saw me, I had found myself. By giving up the role of endless giver, I had discovered the joy of simply being. I touched the pearls at my neck, which I now wore for myself, not from tradition or obligation. Somehow they felt different, lighter, free. A shooting star streaked across the sky, and I made a wish. Not for reconciliation or revenge, but for wisdom. The wisdom to know when to hold on and when to let go, when to give and when to keep, when to love and when to walk away. Inside, my phone remained silent, but my heart was at peace for the first time in decades. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm I had never known before, a rhythm that belonged entirely to me. I woke when I wanted, ate what I craved, spent my days pursuing interests I had abandoned decades ago. The art class at the community college became a sanctuary. My hands, once busy with lesson plans and Maria's endless needs, now shaped clay and mixed colors on canvas. "You have talent," the instructor said, examining my still life of the pearl necklace. "Have you ever considered showing your work?" The question would have made me laugh a month ago. But now I simply said, "Maybe. Let me see where this takes me." Karen organized weekly dinners that rotated between our homes. Our circle expanded. Helen brought her sister. Martha invited her neighbor. Soon we were 8, then 10 women, all with stories of reinvention, of choosing themselves after years of being chosen last. "We should have a name," Helen suggested one evening. "Like a club." "The Second Act Society," Karen proposed, raising her glass. We all drank to that. My phone remained mostly quiet. Occasional texts from former colleagues, invitations to school events I politely declined, updates from the lawyer about closed cases. But nothing from Maria. Until one Tuesday morning in late October. The text came at 6 a.m., pulling me from sleep. "Mom, Daniel filed the divorce papers. It's really over. I don't know who I am anymore." I stared at the message for a long time. The old Sue would have called immediately, would have driven over, would have tried to piece together what Maria had broken. The new Sue made coffee first, sat with her journal, watched the sunrise paint her kitchen walls gold. Then I replied, "I'm sorry you're hurting, but maybe not knowing who you are is the beginning of finding out. Your therapist can help with that." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Can we meet?" "Just coffee. I won't ask for anything." I thought about it. Weighed the risk of reopening wounds against the possibility of healing. 2 weeks from today. The cafe on Maple Street, 10 a.m. If you're late, I won't wait. "I'll be there. Thank you." I set the phone down and returned to my morning routine. Yoga on the porch, breakfast while reading, a walk through the neighborhood as leaves crunched under my feet. Whatever happened in 2 weeks, I would be fine. I had learned the most important lesson. My peace didn't depend on Maria's choices. That afternoon, as I worked in my garden planting spring bulbs for next year, Mrs. Chen came over with a container of soup. "You look different," she said, studying my face. "Lighter somehow." "I feel lighter," I admitted. "Like I've been carrying something heavy for so long. I forgot what it felt like to stand up straight." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "My daughter called yesterday. First time in 2 years. She said she's been in therapy, working on things. That's wonderful. Maybe." Mrs. Chen's smile was cautious. "We'll see. I'm not holding my breath, but I'm not holding grudges either." After she left, I stood in my garden, dirt under my nails, autumn sun on my face. In the spring, tulips would bloom where I was planting now. Red ones for new beginnings, yellow ones for friendship, white ones for peace. I didn't know if Maria and I would find our way back to each other, but I knew with absolute certainty that I would be okay either way. The 2 weeks passed in a blur of ordinary magic. Art classes where I lost myself in color and form. Book club discussions that turned into philosophical debates. Quiet evenings with Karen, sipping wine and watching old movies. The night before I was supposed to meet Maria, I couldn't sleep. Not from anxiety, but from a strange excitement. Not about seeing my daughter, but about showing her who I had become. I laid out my clothes carefully. Not the blue dress that represented sacrifice and humiliation, but a new burgundy sweater Karen had helped me pick out. "This color makes you look powerful," she had said. "Like you could run the world. The pearls, of course. Always the pearls now, my talisman of survival." At 9:45 a.m., I walked into the cafe on Maple Street. I arrived early deliberately, chose a table by the window, ordered a latte. I wanted to be settled, grounded, when Maria arrived. At 9:58, she walked in. I barely recognized her. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by jeans and a simple sweater. No makeup, hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked younger somehow, but also older. Less polished, but more real. She saw me and hesitated, as if asking permission to approach. I nodded at the empty chair. "Thank you for coming," she said, sitting down carefully. "I wasn't sure you would." I said I would be here. A waitress came over. Maria ordered black coffee, nothing else. We sat in silence for a moment. Through the window, I watched people hurrying past, everyone busy with their own dramas, their own journeys. "I don't know where to start," Maria finally said. "Start with the truth," I suggested. "That's always a good place." She took a shaky breath. "I was ashamed of you. Not because of who you were, but because of what it said about me, where I came from." Tears started sliding down her cheeks. Victoria and her friends, they made me feel like my past was something to erase. And you were the biggest reminder. I stayed quiet, letting her continue. The wedding, the seating chart, all of it. I told myself I was just trying to keep the peace. But my therapist made me see the truth. I was choosing their approval over your dignity. She wiped her eyes, and I kept making that choice over and over until you stopped letting me. "Yes," I said simply. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so incredibly sorry." I sipped my latte, took my time responding. "I appreciate the apology, but I need you to understand something. Sorry isn't enough to rebuild what we had, because what we had was broken long before the wedding." She nodded, crying harder now. "If we're going to have a relationship moving forward," I continued, "it has to be built on honesty and mutual respect, not on my sacrifice and your entitlement. I know. That's what I want. I want to know you, really know you, not as my mother who does things for me, but as Sue, as a person." The use of my name, not Mom, felt significant. "That will take time," I said. "Trust isn't rebuilt in a day or even a month. I'll wait as long as it takes." I believed her, or at least wanted to. "Tell me about your therapy," I said, changing the subject slightly. "What are you learning?" For the next hour we talked. Really talked, maybe for the first time in years. She told me about recognizing her patterns, about understanding how Victoria had manipulated her insecurities, about grieving the loss of Daniel and the life she thought she wanted. I told her about my art classes, about the Second Act Society, about the scholarship fund I had created. "You're giving the money to strangers?" she asked, and I braced for resentment. But instead she smiled sadly. "That's actually perfect. They'll appreciate it in a way I never did." When we finally stood to leave, she reached out tentatively for a hug. I let her, but kept it brief. "Can we do this again?" she asked. "Maybe in another 2 weeks?" "Maybe," I said. "Let's see how we feel." As I walked to my car, I felt something unexpected. Not happiness, not quite, but hope. The fragile, cautious hope that maybe, someday, we could build something new from the ashes of what we'd lost. But even if we didn't, I would be okay. I had already proven that to myself. My phone showed no new messages. As I drove away from that first meeting, I felt lighter than I had in months. Not healed, not yet, but no longer weighted down by anger or resentment. The following weeks fell into a pattern of careful rebuilding. Maria and I met every 2 weeks at the same cafe. Sometimes our conversations lasted hours, sometimes just 30 minutes before one of us needed space. She told me about her job search, how Victoria's name on her resume had become more liability than asset, about the small apartment she'd rented, modest but hers, about learning to cook for herself, to pay her own bills, to exist without someone else's money or approval. I told her about my artwork, about the women in my Second Act Society, about the quiet joy of living for myself. "I was so busy trying to impress people who didn't matter," she said one afternoon, "that I destroyed my relationship with the one person who always did." "Yes," I said simply. I wasn't ready to say it's okay, because it wasn't. Not yet. In December, Maria asked if she could come to my house for the first time since I'd moved. Just for tea, she said quickly. "I'm not asking to stay. I'd like to see where you live now." I thought about it for a day before agreeing. She arrived exactly on time, carrying a small poinsettia. "I remember you always loved these at Christmas," she said shyly. We sat in my sunny kitchen, drinking tea from mugs I'd bought just for myself. She looked around at the yellow walls, the artwork from my class on the refrigerator, the photos of my friends on the mantel. "There's not a single picture of me," she observed. "No," I agreed. "I'm not ready for that yet." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I understand." Before she left, she paused at the door. "I'm grateful you're giving me a chance. Even if it's just this. Tea every few weeks. It's more than I deserve." "Maybe," I said, "but it's what I'm willing to give right now." Christmas came. I spent it with Karen and the Second Act Society, a potluck dinner full of laughter and stories. Maria sent a text. "Merry Christmas, Sue. Thank you for this year. For teaching me what I needed to learn," I replied. "Merry Christmas, Maria." On New Year's Eve, as I sat on my porch watching fireworks in the distance, I reflected on the year that had passed. The humiliation at the wedding felt like a lifetime ago. That woman who sat by the dumpsters, afraid to demand her own dignity, seemed like a stranger now. I had lost a daughter, but found myself. Had given up a role but gained a life. Had walked away from exploitation dressed as love, and discovered what real love felt like. The love of friends who saw me, the love of students who appreciated me, the love I had finally learned to give myself. My phone buzzed. A text from Maria. New Year's resolution. Become someone worthy of a second chance, not just with you, but with myself. I smiled and replied, "That's a good resolution. I hope you keep it." As midnight struck and the new year began, I made my own resolution. To keep choosing myself, to keep building this life I'd created, to remain open to the possibility of reconciliation with Maria, but never at the cost of my own peace. The pearls around my neck caught the light from the distant fireworks. Thomas's grandmother had worn them. I had worn them. Maybe someday Maria would too, when she became the woman she was meant to be, not the woman others expected her to be. But even if that day never came, the pearls would still be beautiful, still be valuable, still be mine. In February, something unexpected happened. An email arrived from a local gallery. "Dear Mrs. Keller, we saw your work at the community college exhibition. We'd like to feature you in our Late Bloomers show this spring. Artists who discovered their passion after 60. I read it 3 times, convinced it was a mistake. Then I called the number at the bottom. "Yes, Mrs. Keller," the curator said. "Your still life series, especially the piece with the pearls. It has such emotion, such history in it." I hung up and immediately called Karen. "They want to show my art, in a real gallery." Her squeal of delight made me pull the phone away from my ear. "I knew it. I knew you had talent." The opening was in April. I invited my Second Act Society, my neighbors Marie from my tutoring sessions. At the last minute, I texted Maria. "I'm having an art show. Saturday at 6. You're welcome to come if you want." She replied immediately, "I'll be there. Thank you for inviting me." The gallery was small but elegant. My paintings hung on white walls, spotlit, with little cards explaining each piece. The centerpiece was Inheritance, the still life of Thomas's grandmother's pearls in their velvet box, painted in rich oils that made them seem to glow from within. Karen arrived first, bringing champagne. Then the others trickled in. Mrs. Chen with her daughter, tentatively reconnecting. Helen with her sister. Martha with 3 friends who were all divorced and thriving. At 6:15, Maria walked in. She wore a simple black dress, her hair down, minimal makeup. She looked nervous, out of place among my new world. I excused myself from a conversation with the curator and went to her. "You came." "Of course I came." She looked around at the paintings. "Sue, these are beautiful. I had no idea you could do this." "Neither did I admitted. "I never had time to find out." We walked through the gallery together, stopping at each painting. When we reached Inheritance, Maria stood staring at it for a long time. "That's Grandma Keller's pearls," she said softly. "Yes, you're wearing them tonight." She touched her own bare neck. I never appreciated what they meant. What you were trying to give me. I know. She turned to me, tears streaming down her face. I threw away something priceless. Not the pearls, you, your love, your respect. People were starting to notice our emotional conversation. I gently took Maria's arm and guided her to a quiet corner. You can't undo the past, I said, but you can learn from it. You're doing that. I see you trying. Is there any chance, she whispered, that someday you'll call me your daughter again? Instead of just Maria? I thought about the question carefully. I don't know. Right now, you're Maria. Someone I'm getting to know. Someone I'm learning to trust again. Maybe that's enough for now, she nodded, wiping her eyes. It is enough. It's more than enough. The curator announced that 3 of my paintings had sold, including Inheritance. I'll buy it, Maria said suddenly. Whatever the price is, I'll save up and buy it back. It's $2,500, I said gently. Her face fell. That will take me months. Then take months, I said. If you still want it then. If you've earned it, we'll talk. She left shortly after, hugging me carefully. I'm proud of you, she said. Thank you for letting me be here. As the evening wound down and guests drifted away, Karen helped me take down the sold signs. That was brave, she said. Letting Maria come. Or foolish. No, brave. You're showing her who you've become. What she missed out on. In May, on a perfect spring morning, I received a check in the mail, $2,500 from Maria's account, with a note. I saved every extra dollar, cut every unnecessary expense, learned to live within my means. I'd like to buy Inheritance if it's still available, not to own it, but to return it to you, because I understand now. It was never about the pearls. It was about the love they represented, the history, the family, everything I was too blind to see. Whether you sell it to me or not, thank you for painting it, for showing me what I lost. Maria, I called her immediately. The painting isn't for sale, I said when she answered. Silence. Then a small, defeated, okay. Because I'm giving it to you, not selling it. Giving it. Sue, I can't. You earned it, I interrupted. Not by saving money, but by doing the work. By changing. By showing up consistently, asking for nothing, proving you meant what you said. She started crying. I don't deserve this. Maybe not. But I'm giving it anyway, because that's what mothers do. We give grace we haven't earned ourselves. Does this mean... She couldn't finish the question. It means we're still rebuilding, I said carefully. But yes, you can call me Mom again. If you want to, I want to, she whispered, more than anything. When she came to pick up the painting, she brought someone with her. A young man I didn't recognize, dressed casually with kind eyes. Mom, this is Josh. We're dating. Nothing serious yet, but I wanted you to meet him. Josh shook my hand. Mrs. Keller, Maria talks about you constantly. About your art, your strength, your wisdom. Does she? I raised an eyebrow at Maria. She blushed. I've been boring him to death with stories about my amazing mother who completely reinvented her life at 71. We had coffee on my porch, the 3 of us. Josh was a teacher at the community college, kind and unpretentious. He came from a large, close family. He made Maria laugh, but more importantly, he made her think. Josh helped me understand something, Maria said as they were leaving. That real love isn't about what someone can give you. It's about who they help you become. After they left, I stood in my garden, surrounded by the vegetables and flowers I had planted. Everything was blooming now. The red tulips for new beginnings, the yellow ones for friendship, the white ones for peace. Karen came over as she often did, bringing wine and gossip. Maria looked happy, she observed. She did. And you? How do you feel about all this? I thought about the question, cautiously hopeful. We'll never get back what we had, but maybe we can build something better, something honest. And if it falls apart again, then I'll still be okay. Because I've learned the most important lesson. My happiness doesn't depend on anyone else. Not even my daughter. As summer arrived, my life fell into a beautiful rhythm. Art classes twice a week, book club every Thursday, tutoring on Tuesdays. Dinners with Maria and Josh once a month, carefully scheduled, never taken for granted. The scholarship fund I had created gave its first award, $10,000 to a single mother studying to be a nurse. Her name was coincidentally Marie, the woman I had been tutoring. "I can't believe this," she said when I told her. "This changes everything." "I know," I said. "Someone changed everything for me once too. Pass it forward." In July, Maria called with unexpected news. Daniel reached out. He wanted me to know he's getting remarried to someone who sounds perfect for him. How do you feel about that? Relieved, actually. Proof that everyone moved on, found better versions of themselves. Even you, especially me. On my 72nd birthday, Maria threw me a surprise party. Nothing elaborate, just my second act society, some neighbors, Josh, and a homemade cake that was slightly lopsided but made with love. "Speech," Karen called out. I stood holding a glass of champagne, looking around at the faces of people who had become my chosen family. "A year ago," I began, I sat next to dumpsters at my daughter's wedding. Invisible, insignificant, a woman who had sacrificed everything and received nothing in return. Maria's face flushed, but she didn't look away. Today, I stand in my own home, surrounded by people who see me, who value me, who chose me just as I chose them. I looked directly at Maria. My daughter and I are rebuilding our relationship, slowly, carefully, on new terms. I don't know where it will end up, but I know it's based on honesty now, not obligation. Maria raised her glass to me, tears streaming down her face. "So, here's what I've learned," I continued. "It's never too late to choose yourself, to walk away from relationships that diminish you, to start over at 71 or 81 or any age. Love that costs you your dignity isn't love. It's exploitation. Real love, the kind worth having, sees you, values you, treats you as if you matter. Because you do matter. We all do." As everyone cheered and clinked glasses, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades, completely, genuinely happy. That night, after everyone left and I was alone in my quiet house, I opened my journal one last time. "Dear Thomas," I wrote, "I hope you're proud of the woman I've become. I didn't do it the way we planned. I lost our daughter for a while, nearly lost myself completely, but I found my way back. Not to who I was, but to who I was always meant to be. Maria is trying, really trying. I don't know if we'll ever be close the way we once were, but maybe that's okay. Maybe what we're building now, this careful, honest relationship between two adults, is better than what we had. The pearls are in a safe place now. Maria has the painting, a reminder of what they represent. Someday, when she's ready, truly ready, maybe I'll give her the real ones. But for now, they're mine, a symbol that I survived, that I mattered, that I always did." I closed the journal and went to my bedroom window. The stars were bright tonight, infinite and beautiful. Somewhere out there, Thomas was watching. And somewhere in this city, Maria was probably lying awake too, thinking about second chances and new beginnings. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from Maria. "Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to. I promise to spend the rest of my life earning back your trust. Not because I want something from you, but because I finally understand what I lost. I love you, Mom. Not for what you can give me, but for who you are. I hope someday I can be half the woman you've become." I read it twice, then typed my reply. "I love you too. Get some sleep. We have brunch on Sunday. Simple. Honest. No grand declarations. Just the beginning of something real." As I turned off my light and settled into bed, the pearls on my dresser caught the moonlight one last time. They had survived generations, survived loss, survived being hidden away by someone who didn't understand their worth. Just like me. Tomorrow I would wake up and paint. Would tutor Marie for her nursing exam. Would have coffee with Karen and plan our next Second Act Society meeting. Would live the life I had built from the ashes of my old one. And if Maria continued to show up, continued to do the work, continued to prove she understood what she had lost, then maybe, someday, there would be a place for her in this new life too. But even if there wasn't, I would be fine. Because I had finally learned the most important lesson of all. I was enough. I had always been enough. And no one, not even my own daughter, could ever make me forget that again. The wedding that had ended in disaster had become my liberation. The The daughter who had rejected me had inadvertently set me free. The pearls that had once symbolized obligation now represented choice, and I chose myself. Finally, completely, unapologetically, I chose myself. The end.